Welcome to Homeschool Today. I'm Andrea Johns. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at several homeschool methods to help you determine what method might be right for you and your family.
Life is crazy, it's a wild. Won't you stay with me for a while? Let me show you your superpower. Let's get to it to know your own school teacher.
In the first episode of this two-part series, we looked at the classical, Charlotte Mason, and Montessori methods of homeschooling. In today's episode, we will look at school at home, unit studies, unschooling, eclectic, and a few lesser-known methods. As I mentioned in Part 1, statistics continually demonstrate that homeschool students outperform their peers in standardized testing, reading, writing, and reasoning. There are more studies that show that homeschoolers are even better prepared than their public school peers and hence perform better in college. Knowing this, it's not surprising that homeschool is on the rise, just as it has been over the last couple decades. According to the National Home Education Research Institute, the NHERI, there were about 2.5 million homeschool students in grades K through 12 in the United States as of spring of 2019. It appears that the homeschool population is continuing to grow at an estimated 2 to 8% each year. That's a lot of homeschoolers. And if you're going to join us, you'll want to know everything you can about the different methods of homeschooling, both before you start your adventure and as you move forward, so you can always know your options if you need to make a change to your home education approach. So, next on the list of homeschooling methods, we're going to look at school at home. It's a form of education that is just exactly what it sounds like. You're bringing traditional schooling techniques into your home for your student to study. It looks and feels very similar to the classroom at your local public school. School-at-home education is typically taught by using single complete curriculum packages. These curriculum packages are typically created by school grade, so a first grader would be a 6-year-old. School-at-home education can be taught independently by the parent, or it can be taught online by certified teachers as a free public or private school option. This is a very common method of homeschooling, as there are several ways to implement it. While this method tends to be expensive because of the cost of the large sets of curriculum that are required each year, parents can create a good amount of curriculum for free. They can use free library resources and purchase books used to help control costs. One of the benefits of this method is that it's very familiar to both parents and students, so there's a comfort level in the materials, administration, and process of the education. Also, if homeschooling is going to be a temporary time for your family, then this method will make it easier to transition back into the school environment when you're ready. Next, we'll take a quick look at a unit studies approach. Unit studies are thematically related learning plans where students will study the same event or object from the perspective of each subject area. Let me explain what this really means. Let's say you have a tween who hates school but really loves learning about ancient Rome. You can create an entire unit study that centers on ancient Rome. The student could study the military in ancient Rome, food in ancient Rome, what family was like at that time, the geography of the Roman Empire, and they could create art projects or design their own Colosseum, and of course read books on the Caesars and maybe a good G.A. Henty book like Beric the Briton, the story of the Roman invasion. One of the big benefits of unit studies is that the student can choose what they want to study. You will then need to design the curriculum for that topic, which would be labor-intensive. However, your efforts will lead to the reward of keeping your student interested and learning. Notebooking and lapbooking are common products of unit studies. Lapbooks are paper manipulatives using file folders in which the student stores creative summaries of their work. Notebooks are assembled using essays, timelines, maps, scrapbook pages, drawings, lab reports, and other work that the student creates. Please keep in mind that unit studies are notorious for leaving major knowledge gaps. By thematically joining subject areas according to objects or events, there is a risk that areas of study like math or science will be ignored or incomplete. Further, not looking at history as a whole, it's easy to miss major events or even entire time periods or people groups in your study. This can be troublesome if the student ever wants to go to high school or college, as they assume that memory pegs from common history have been learned by the student. However, if you didn't study the explorers in your homeschool, there is a risk that the student might not know about Daniel Boone or Marco Polo or Captain James Cook. I think you get the idea. The next method of homeschooling I want to talk about is called unschooling. This is by far the most radically unconventional style of homeschooling in our list of methods. It may not even really be considered a method because it's so adaptable to the needs and interests of each unique student and teacher. Every family and every student is different, so the unschooling homeschool method will look different in every home. This form of learning is based largely on the work of the homeschooling pioneer John Holt. Learning focuses largely on the student's interests, using a blend of experimental, activity-based, make-it-up-as-you-go kind of learning. There is no plan to follow, no prescribed list of objectives. Unschooling leads homeschool parents and students to question almost everything about conventional schooling, public, private, or even traditional homeschooling. In this model, the parent is a facilitator to learning. A caution for you, if you're considering unschooling, is that it can be sporadic and unsystematic in covering content that is considered common knowledge among traditionally schooled students. As with unit studies, this method can leave knowledge gaps for students that could have consequences if the student ever chooses to attend a traditional school or college in the future. The next method is the Eclectic method of homeschooling, and it's probably the most common method of homeschooling in use today. Eclectic homeschooling is also called relaxed homeschooling. This method is extremely popular, but because it allows parents to combine the best of all the processes and resources from different methods to create a plan that is unique for their children. Eclectic homeschooling is typically child-directed, non-curriculum-based, and flexible. If you like the way classical teaches history, you can combine that with school-at-home reading programs and Charlotte Mason science exploration and nature walks. One of the growing trends in eclectic schooling is a blend of homeschool and limited classes in a traditional school setting. This could be science taken at the public school or half-day at a private school for foreign language, art and music a couple days a week, or even public online school for math and photography. The options with the eclectic method of homeschooling are truly endless. One caution with this method is that it can be overwhelming with so many options. Also, some methods and some curriculums maybe just don't mix so well together. So be certain that you clearly think through what your goals are as you start planning your year using this homeschool method. The final method of homeschool I want to talk about isn't really a single method. I feel like it would be foolish for us to assume that there are no viable options for homeschooling beyond the big 7 that we've talked about throughout this video series. There are many other lesser-known methods of homeschooling that offer viable ways to educate at home. Some of the most common of these methods are the Waldorf Method, the Multiple Intelligence Method, and the Moore Formula. First, the Waldorf education method uses a learning process that is threefold. It engages the head, heart, and hands, which translates to thinking, feeling, and doing. Waldorf teachers work to nourish and engage each child through a curriculum and methodology that integrates academics, arts, and practical skills. These students don't learn out of a standard textbook, but might create their own textbook instead. The multiple intelligence method believes that the best approach to homeschooling is to adapt materials and scheduling to work with each student's natural strengths and talents. The foundation of this method is that education is the easiest and most effective when it uses the person's strengths and not their weaknesses to facilitate learning. I've never taught specifically using this method, but I will have a future video on multiple intelligences because I truly believe that the concept is sound and can be used to help in planning any homeschool method to be more effective for the individual student. The last method is the Moore Formula. It's a unique approach to education. Its founders, Dr. Raymond Moore and his wife Dorothy Moore, are often called the grandparents of the homeschool movement. The Moore Formula teaches that formal school is better started later than early. It calls for very little or even no formal schooling until the student reaches 8 years of age. Instead of formal schooling, the children focus on learning how to do chores, mastering life skills, and volunteering with their parents. When schooling does begin, it's done in a natural, relaxed style of learning. Well, that takes us to the end of our time together looking at the high-level overview of the big 7 methods of homeschooling and a few lesser-known methods. I hope that 1 or 2 of these methods piqued your interest and that you'll want to get more information on them so you can start the actual planning of your homeschool year. There are videos on our channel, or at least they will be upcoming, that cover each of these models in much greater detail, including resources, beginning to plan, and what a daily schedule might look like in your home for each of the methods. Please take a quick moment and hit the like button at the bottom of the screen. It's what keeps us making these videos, and then the subscribe button and the little bell so you'll be among the first to know as new videos are released. As always, thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, happy homeschooling.